morning, everybody, whether you're on the East Coast, West Coast, or around the world. This is Football Talk, and of course, it is Thursday, so it's time for our Pick'em show. Grab some coffee, and let's get into it. This is brought to you by BetUS, and of course, you can bet along with us. The link is right down there in the bio if you are watching on YouTube, Facebook. If you're on Roku, then check out footballtalkbo.com, and you can bet with us, and of course you can also play along with us in our Pick'em poll. So other than that, let's go ahead and get rolling. Now we ended up going 11-5, so it was a good week for us, and we went 11-5 not only in straight up picks, but we went 11-5 against the spread and 10-6 on the over under. So it was a good betting week overall. There's a few of them that we missed on. One of them was the Thursday night game, the Thanksgiving game of the Lions in Green Bay. I figure most people probably took the Lions. I guess most people probably got that wrong. That Lions curse seems to be a real thing for Thanksgiving, and Green Bay has looked a little bit better over the last couple of weeks. So kudos to them. Love has started to kind of come into his own, and hopefully they can be more competitive than they've been most of the season. That being said, I took the L right there on the Lions. I had the Texans beating the Jags, and the biggest reason for that is I don't love the Jags defense, and it's not that statistically they're horrible. They're not great in key spots. So I had the Texans getting that done, and it was a close game, but came up just short. I took the Saints again, and man, I got to stop taking the Saints because they've been a problem for me in Pick'em all year. They should be so much better than they are. That's definitely one of the coaches that probably get fired this year. So I took the Saints. Obviously, the Falcons pull that out. I took the Bucks to beat the Colts. Another one where that one was really a coin flip to me. That one could have went either way, and I took the Bucks, but didn't feel great about it. Bucks come up short. And then the last one was the Bears at the Vikings. That was a game that nobody wanted to win. And I mean, the Bears get it done at the end. I took the Vikings in that. But I mean, at the end of the day, that was just a horrific watch. If you didn't see it, don't go back and watch it. It's not worth it. It was a game that should have been slated for Thursday Night Football, as bad as it was. So, but those were my 5 losses. Hopefully you guys did all right this week as well. And so we can start going here. We got quite a few teams that are on bye week this week. We got the Bills, the Bears, Raiders, Vikings, Giants, and Ravens all on their bye weeks. A couple of those teams kind of need this time to get right. The Bills is probably the biggest one there. They've been wildly inconsistent. Hopefully they can come out of the break and be rejuvenated and show us something that makes us think that they could make a push to try and get one of those playoff spots, because the way that they've been playing thus far has been so inconsistent, but also kind of a head scratcher as to why they've been all over the place. I really thought that this was going to be their last year in that Super Bowl window, because they got some guys they're going to have to pay. The complexion of that team's going to change a little bit after this season. And so I thought this was kind of their last gasp at that, at that Super Bowl window. And they've looked anything but a Super Bowl type of team. Now, of course, going through this week's picks, we do have a special guest. You've probably heard him on Sports Map Radio, 28-year pro. Welcome, John Ryan.
Thanks for having me, Bo. How are you?
Doing good. How about you?
Good. Running crazy, but it's that time of year, you know what it's about.
Absolutely. All right, so we were just about to kick off the picks for this week. And, of course, we started off tonight, Thursday Night Football, Hawks going down to Dallas. The Cowboys have been playing good but punching down, right? Like, they haven't beat anybody that has had a winning record. but they played well and they beat up on bad teams. So it's not like they're just sneaking by. And of course, the Hawks are sliding a little bit, especially as of late. Dallas is a 9-point favorite, over under 47.5. Who do you have there?
I like Seattle in this game, actually. To be truthful, it's actually a premium bet. One of the reasons is the Circa puts out betting lines preseason for the entire 18 weeks of the NFL season. So what I've learned by doing the Circa contest for so many years is that you get those lines, and that's your benchmark. That's what the market thought about those teams before the week one even started. And the line has moved 6 points since then. Before the season started, Dow was 3.5 points. Mm-hmm. They are now 9.5, and I'm starting to see some 10s that started as early as yesterday. So when it moves 6 or more points, it becomes a contrarian bet against that flow of popularity. And that's one of the many, many reasons I'm on Seattle tonight. I like doing live in-game betting too, Bo. So nobody tells you have to put your whole bet in before the game starts. And I like doing, in this particular case, 70% of my normal bet size at plus 9.5. And then I'm going to hope that Dallas scores first. And I know that sounds really counterintuitive, but I want them to score first, and then I'll jump on the remaining 30% at that time. But the score has to be in the first half, which obviously it will be in this particular matchup. And then I'll jump on Seattle with the remaining amount.
Yeah, well, and there's definitely there's definitely opportunity for Seattle to cover for sure, because Micah Parsons and Fowler both could be out due to illness. So, I mean, this could be a closer game than people are thinking it should be. In this case, just because Walker is still out, the offensive line, they lose one of their guards for the game. I'm going to go with the Cowboys to cover, but the under.
Well, the under's been a popular bet on primetime games for sure. 11-1 on Monday night alone.
Yep.
So absolutely. I'm with you on that.
All right, we got the Sunday morning games. We got the Cards at the Steelers. Pittsburgh is a 5.5 and an over-under of 41. This is one where I like the Steelers to win outright, but I like the Cards to cover.
It's a tough game to handicap. I really don't have a side to state. One of the reasons is that Pittsburgh has tied the most wins in which they got outstatted in the box score. Exactly. In other words, their total yards was less than the opponent in 6 games. I might add that the Philadelphia Eagles are almost right there themselves at 4 games now after that amazing Sunday game last week. But Pittsburgh is very hard for me to figure out, and I don't like fading Mike Tomlin. I think he's one of the most underrated head coaches probably in the history of the game. He's always been kind of in the shadow of the Bill Belichick Super Bowl championship years, but he's done a great job. I just would leave this game alone personally, but I certainly respect your play on the Steelers. I think you said, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, because I'm looking at it 3 different ways, right? Because we play pick 'em, right? So you're picking straight up, and then of course if you're picking against the spread. And then, of course, the over-under, right? So there's 3 different lines that we're attacking. So I have the Steelers winning straight up, but I don't have them to cover because their offense can't score, right? And the Cards, although a scrappy team, finds ways to not win, right? So I look at the Cards to be close but not win. And then I go with the under here because neither team has put up points.
Yeah, I think so. That trend is well entrenched. Pittsburgh needs this win clearly to go to 8-4.
Yep.
There was 2 other teams. I'll mention this real quick that won 6 games where they were outstatted in the box score by week 11 since 1990. The last one was 2016 with the New York Giants. I'm sorry, the Green Bay Packers, who lost to the Giants in the divisional playoff round. Yep. The other one was the 2011 Peyton Manning and Indianapolis Colts. And they lost in the wild card round. So even though a lot of people think Pittsburgh's winning games with smoke and mirrors, these teams find a way to get into the playoffs. And look at Philly right now, 10-1, 4 of those 10 wins. they were outplayed. And against Buffalo, they were thoroughly outplayed.
Yep.
So it just goes to show that Pittsburgh is not a team to fade, I don't think, but I could definitely see the backdoor cover with the Cardinals.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it's funny because you never want to see a team, you never want to see those stats, right? Like you don't want to back into victories because it's not sustainable, right? Like that was the Vikings last year. They had 11-0 in one-score games. It's like, well, at some point you're going to regress back to the mean, right? And that's what we've seen this year. So was it amazing what they did? Sure, but that's not sustainable. You're not going to win every week that way. You can't. The league there's too much parity in the league overall for that to work.
Agreed 100%.
All right, so we got the Falcons traveling to the Jets. Atlanta's a 2.5 with an over/under of 34. I mean, let's be honest. Neither one of these teams is very good. I like the Falcons to cover just because I don't trust the Jets offense to actually do anything. But this is another one where I'm going under.
Well, here again, it's just one of those games that we started to show off with the circa benchmark, as I call it. This game actually opened with the Jets as a 6.5-point favorite. Now, keep in mind, that was with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback and a lot of hype behind and expectations and hope that the Jets were going to be playoff bound and maybe even Super Bowl bound. But now it's gone where Atlanta is now favored. So there may be some value here with the Jets. So again, live in-game betting, you don't have to bet anything pre-flop. You can use, if you like the movement here, which would then give you a play on the Jets at +2.5. See if Atlanta scores first. And if they do, then jump on the Jets at that time with some pizza money. Doesn't have to be a full bet either.
Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't be reaching deep in the pocket for the Jets to cover.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And then we got the Broncos at the Texans. Texans are a 3.5 over/under 47. This one is interesting because if you look at it topically, the Broncos have looked better as of late, right? The offense, not so much, but that defense has created a ton of turnovers. I think at some point here they turn back into pumpkins. I think this is their week, and I think the Texans get this one done. I have Houston to cover, but again, the under. 47 seems high for both of these teams that are inconsistent in scoring, especially when you have Russell Wilson that is averaging less than 200 yards a game. They're not exactly a juggernaut on offense.
No, I like the underplay too. I think, one thing that people have probably heard is that the under has been a blind bet. You're hitting almost 60% on the season, which is unprecedented in any season. Now, that doesn't mean intuitively that you're going to think that the over is going to bounce back because there's no statistical correlation with a 50-50 proposition, which is the great equalizer of the spread. So that's the best advice I think I can give from my, long time of doing this is that you just stay away from that temptation to start betting overs simply because the unders are 11-1 on Monday night. There's no value in thinking that, it's 11-1. It's got to go over. Well, no, it doesn't have to do anything. And much in this case with this game, Denver gave up 70 points to the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah.
That's like an ancient memory now because that defense, as you alluded to, as you detailed, is doing quite well right now. And I'm not a big Sean Payton fan, but you have to tip your hat to him. He's really pulled this team together. And now, just like magically, they're 6-5 and getting themselves into the hunt for the playoffs, which is just an amazing accomplishment by itself. Denver is 7-0 under after a double-digit win in games played over the last 3 seasons. So that's one of the angles I just pulled out of the database. And that clearly supports your bet on the under. So I think Denver wins. I don't know if it's going to be one of those covers because we've had so many games this year, near record amount already, that are decided by one possession. So this could be one of those 3-point Denver wins, and you get the Denver win, Texans cover, and the under.
Yep. Yeah, it's always that half-point hook that gets you, right?
Thank goodness I had Buffalo plus 3.5 on Sunday. That was sweating that one out.
All right, this one we got the Lions headed to New Orleans. Lions are a 4-point favorite, over under of 46. This Saints team, despite the roster, has been bad. You look at it on paper, and they should be so much better than they are. Everything I've seen out of this Saints team shows me that they're going to have a new coach next year. But I'm going to take the Lions. I'll take them to cover. But again, the under. The under is really dominating this week. Vegas really thought these teams are going to put up some points, I guess. 46 isn't a crazy number, but when you look at how few points the Saints are putting up, the Lions would have to really carry the load of that over-under.
Oh, there's no question. And you would expect the Lions to bounce back from that terrible game they played on Thanksgiving Day. I used to think that if the Super Bowl was held on Thanksgiving, the Lions would have 40 Super Bowl trophies in their building. They just seem to play unbelievably well for like decades when they were on playing on Thanksgiving. But this particular one last week was a rather dreadful loss. And if they're going to be a team that's going to contend with the 49ers and the Philadelphia Eagles, they better get their act together quick. And no better time than against the Saints, who you said have trouble scoring. And what does Detroit do well? They score. So I think you're right. If the over is going to become a winning bet, I think your better bet would be to bet the over team total with the Lions, because you can't trust the Saints to score.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah, no, that it's crazy how many coaches are probably getting fired this year based on underperforming. There's always a few, right? There's always like 4 or 5. But I mean, you could have as many as 8 coaches fired this year, which is insane when you think of a quarter of the league could get fired.
Do you think Belichick is one of them?
Man, that's tough. They're playing so bad. He should be, right? But at the same time, do they look at it as they still owe him money? And, it'd be kind of a rough way for him to go out. So do you strip him of his GM duty, let him coach? Because clearly his ability to GM and bring players in hasn't been amazing. So do you get him a GM and see if he can still do it? Or do you just say, you know what, we're done and blow it all up? Because, Mac Jones doesn't look like he's your guy. And, the roster is just, we'll call it disjointed. Right?
Yeah. That's very polite.
So
it's a mess. It really is a mess.
It is. Yeah. No, if you were to blow it up, this is that time. I don't think they do it during the season, though. I think they wait till the end, and Kraft gives Bill a high five and says thanks.
Yeah, and that way it's not a firing either. That's a good point. He goes out and with dignity, which he should be granted.
Absolutely.
Yep.
All right, so we got the Colts going into battle out the Titans. This is almost a pick'em game. Colts are a -1, over under of 43. I have the Titans to win outright. And then, of course, at minus or +1, if you're going to win, you're going to cover. So, I got the Titans to win here, and then I'm going to go with the over, though. Both of these teams have been able to put up some points. They haven't been able to stop anybody, but they have scored some points. So I'm going to go Titans to win outright and the over.
I like both of those a lot, Bo. I have a money line system here that supports that. It's gone 22-4 over the last 5 seasons. That's 85%. And the requirements are to bet on a team revenging a loss of 7 or fewer points to the current opponent, and is a team with a losing record being played from week 9 on out, which is the second half of the season. That set of parameters is 22-4 for 85% straight up. So Tennessee, based on that, should win this game pretty easily, and I like the overplay too.
Yeah, well, 43 is just not a very big number, so that's one of those where it's probably about right? Like
Yep.
you're always mad when Vegas is right. They're like, this is what we think it's going to be. It's like, I think you're probably right there. Yeah.
Interesting you bring that up because Vegas had this, before the season started at 40.5, and it's one of the few games that's actually gone up. So I think the market is telling you that the over, if you're going to play the total, the over is probably the right one.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's that close from the beginning of the year to now, and still on that lines. That's actually kind of impressive this late in the year.
I agree.
All right, we got the Chargers at the Pats. LA is only a 6-point favorite and an over-under of 41. This one, I mean, Chargers obviously win here, and they definitely cover. I think it's the under, though, because the Pats aren't going to score.
Yeah, I don't know. Between the Giants and the Patriots last week, that was just dreadful. And it's really nobody's fault. I mean, you can say that it's Mac Jones, it's the lack of skill position talent. It's a pretty long laundry list, so to speak, of the needs that New England needs to become a competitive team again. And they might be pretty bad for many years to come. But in this game,
I think they're about 53 guys from being a decent team.
At least 46. That's funny. But with the Chargers, I had a ticket, this pizza money bet that they were going to go to the Super Bowl. So how wrong could I have been on that?
Yeah, right.
I really did see them being 7-4 instead of 4-7 at this point, and it just hasn't worked out for them. They've had a lot of what I call dumb losses along the way. But if the woulda, shoulda, coulda club doesn't get you to the Super Bowl, that eliminates you from the playoffs in most cases. So this is a tough game to call, but I think you have to go Chargers win this one. And then I like your play on the under, that you just don't know if New England's even going to score double digits. Possibly maybe the over team total in the Chargers would be a pretty good look. But I would just stay away from anything New England right now. And that's I'm a Patriots fan, and it's hard for me to say that, to stay away from them. But these things, it's like a bull market and a bear market. The Patriots are in a bear market right now, and that's the way football is.
Well, I mean, and you go into this, you don't even know who's going to be under center. Right. It could be Jones. He could sit him. You don't know. So and anything we've seen out of the backup isn't good either. So,
it's awful.
I was actually really surprised that the line is only 6. I actually thought it would have been a much bigger line.
And I attribute that to recency bias, because the Chargers have underperformed. And what does the public do? The public will go against those type of teams and undervalue them. So I think clearly in this game, if there's any value at all, maybe as many as 3 points, it'd be on the Chargers, because you're right. 8.5, 9 seems like a better line. Even if they were playing in London, there's no home field advantage anymore in Foxborough. So I think there definitely is. Like, if you could get the Chargers that pick them during the first half live in game, I think that's an absolute steal.
Oh, for sure. Well, especially when you think of where the Chargers' shortcoming is on defense. Well, they don't really have to worry about it because the Pats' offense is terrible. Yeah, the Chargers' offense have scored points all year. I mean, they're a top yardage team. So, they're going to put up points. They're going to move the ball. And where their shortcoming is on defense, this is another coach that's definitely getting fired this year, in Staley, is where the Pats have no answer for it. So it's not like they get to take advantage of the fact that the Chargers don't play defense very well. So I could see this kind of being a blowout, really.
Yeah, I can agree with that too. I was looking at some of the Belichick trends here. And keep in mind that these trends support the under, but in most seasons, it's because that New England defense was so good.
Sure.
Now we have an offense that is just absolutely horrid. But Belichick 19-4 under after having lost 6 or 7 of the last 8 games. And actually that goes back to 1992. 10-2 under after having lost 8 or more of the last 10 games. 63-39 under off a road loss. 8-1 under after scoring 14 or fewer points in the previous game over the last 3 seasons. So that's much more recent type of trend there. So again, I don't see this going over 40 points unless the Chargers score 42 on their own merit.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it could easily be 35-3.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of what I'm looking at is it's going to be like, low 30s, maybe like a 27-28 to 6. It's going to be something like that, right? Like the Pats will probably get down and kick a couple of long field goals and then probably miss one also. And that'll be it.
Yep. I agree. I feel like we're talking about the Giants, but it is the Patriots.
Fortunately, we don't have to talk about the Giants today because they are on the bye week.
and that is greatly appreciated. I think they should have 2 bye weeks because of their play to have time to get back together to some kind of normalcy.
Well, I mean, to be fair, they're going to have like 6 bye weeks at the end of the season here.
Yeah, that's true. Great point.
We got the Dolphins headed into Washington. Miami is a 9.5-point favorite, and the over/under of 50. So this one's tough because there's so much wrong with Washington. They fire a bunch of their coaches. They let go 2 of their key players on defense. There's no real answer on offense. So you have to go. The Dolphins obviously win this game. 9.5 is such a big number though. And I think they can do that. The over/under of 50 is really going to depend on which Washington defense shows up. Obviously, Ron is calling the defense now that he hasn't all year. I don't really think that's going to make them better, though. I'm going to actually take the over here because I think the Dolphins just beat the brakes off them.
I think so too. This game scares me to death, and the reason is I'm still alive in some of those eliminator contests, and I do have Miami available. The problem with it is, back to the Circa, preseason, this was a 3.5-point Miami favorite. They're all the way up to 9.5, 10 now, and that's more than 6 points, which puts the brakes on my enthusiasm with Miami, especially after I picked Kansas City last week in my eliminator and saw 14-0 Raiders, and I just was like, oh my God, what a way to die in the contest. Right? Kansas City... it's almost embarrassing sometimes. Like you think, all right, well, this is good. This gets me to next week. And then you see the Raiders up 14-0. And you just kind of like takes all the wind out of the sails and you just are just devastated. But, it's entertainment. So I think I may stay off of Miami on this one just because I just kind of smell a rat here with Washington. Like you said, we don't know what defense is going to show up. I do think that it's going to be high scoring, and 49.5 may seem awful high for an NFL game this season, but it's really not with these 2 teams. Yep. And I think you're right on the over. But in terms of the side, even though Miami's a big favorite, there are times where these dogs come through and pull off the upset. So I'll stand aside on the game, but I like the over.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. That's why I'm apprehensive to take a 9.5. It's such a big number, but and I know Washington's going to score. I just don't think they're going to score much. And the only reason they're going to score at all is because, let's be honest, Miami doesn't play very good defense. I mean,
not at all.
They win games is they try and outrun you, right? Like it's a track meet, and they just want to put up more points than you. Similar to Dallas, they punch down on bad teams, but haven't beat anybody that matters yet. So this game isn't going to be that kind of test. So I think they punch down, and I still think they cover, but I don't love a spread that's that big.
Yeah, I don't either. That's for sure. The Miami rushing defense has gotten a lot better. Week 1, they allowed 234 yards to the Chargers, who are known for their passing.
Yep.
But since then, there's only been 2 games where they allowed over 100, and that was 104 against Buffalo and 108 against Carolina. So that may be a part of, if Washington can't run the ball, which has been their mantra all season long, because Hal leads the league in passing yards, passing attempts, and passing percentage of plays run. So maybe that Miami run defense isn't going to matter. But that also means that the Miami defense could just put literally three guys rushing the quarterback, knowing that Hal's going to be throwing just about every single down. So that could create some short field turnovers too. That'll lead to points for Miami.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, that definitely helps the over.
Oh, it definitely does. Yep. It's going to be a lot of passes thrown in this game.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Yeah, this will all be through the air. There's no doubt. And then it'll ultimately have to be for Washington, because after Miami goes up a score or two, they're going to be relegated to just throwing the ball anyway to try and pace. So I would imagine the running game gets kind of abandoned, especially on the Washington side, relatively quick. And then I guess we'll find out if Miami has developed much of a running game later in the game when they have to.
Yep, I agree.
All right, so we got some afternoon games here. We got the Panthers at the Bucks. This is going to be a painful game to watch. The Bucks are a 5.5-point favorite, over under of 37. I feel bad for Bryce Young. He's been put in a terrible situation. And of course, now Frank Reich fired again twice in 2 years. So we'll see if he gets another crack at the apple there. But I go with the Bucks here, even though they've lost the last three, I believe. I'm going to go with the Bucks. I'll take them to cover just because there's nothing about this Panthers team that I like. And but I'm going to go with the under. 37 seems high. This feels like a 15-13 kind of game.
I don't know which is worse, this matchup between Tampa Bay and Carolina, or the Bachelor in Paradise. To be honest with you, I don't know which one I'd rather not watch. Right. If I had to watch one of the two, I'd probably try to break the TV, I think.
Yeah, pretty much.
But yeah, seriously though, neither team really has much to play for. The division that the Tampa Bay Bucks find themselves in is the weakest one by far in all of football. Yes, they could win this game 5-7 and make a run at trying to be 8-9. That might be enough to win it. I have no idea. But the 37 does seem high, and I kind of chuckled when you said that, because 37 is not a lot of points, but with these two teams, it's a ton of points. And I think you have something with the under here. And I mean, goodness, Carolina has one win. So why can't Tampa Bay just win this game? I can't tell you why they wouldn't.
Baker would be the difference here, right? Which version of Baker shows up? Is he the Baker that's going to throw 3 touchdowns, or is it the Baker that's going to throw 3 picks? You never know week to week. It's why I hate trying to pick the Bucks, because you just don't know which team is going to step on the field on any given day. It's why I'm never a Baker believer, because he's just so wildly inconsistent, which is unfortunate, because when he's on, he looks really good, but when he's off, he is way off. Yep.
And I was just thinking, tongue in cheek, if he throws 3 touchdowns and 3 interceptions, then the under is not going to be a good bet. Probably.
That's true. Yeah. If he does both, that would be one of the most Baker things to do. But on the
and
plus
win by 1.
Win.
Yep.
So at least one of my 3 lines would work out.
Yeah, that's better than none, right?
Exactly. Then we have the Browns at the Rams. The Rams are a 3.5-point favorite, over under of 40. Obviously, the Browns have no Deshaun. Not that he's played particularly well this year anyway. Other than the game that he got knocked out of, he's been underwhelming. The Browns still have an elite defense, but I like the Rams here. I don't like them to cover, though. The 3.5, that half hook, I think, is what takes that out for me. I think they win by a late field goal. And another one with the under. I think this is going to be a slow-moving game.
Yeah, it's hard for me to bet against Cleveland, because of that defense is just so good. If it's not the top defense in the NFL, it's second or third. And it doesn't matter whether it's first, second, or third. They are a unit that can just, bring the load every single week. And the Rams are a team that are I think, susceptible to a defense that is this aggressive yet disciplined. Their gap play has been extraordinarily good. And, it's a tough game for the Rams. Preseason, this game was Cleveland was favored by 2.5. Now they're a dog of 3.5, which again is that 6-point margin. Yep. So I'd be careful, betting the -3.5. And I would prefer, if you like the Rams, in-game bet, and odds are you're going to get them at pick'em. It's just the way the NFL is. Scoring volatility is up, lead changes are up, and in this matchup, you would expect some lead changes, even though the total is only 40 points. So I like your takes.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely going to be one of those. It's going to be field goals in this game, right? Yep,
I agree.
It's going to be ball movement, but no finish. And especially on the Browns side, right? It's going to be the defense is going to hold the Rams, and they're going to kick some long field goals. And then the offense of the Browns just isn't great. And so they're going to move around. They're going to get a couple of field goals too. It's why I took the under, and also why I didn't take them. That half-point hook took the spread off for me. Like if it was a 3-point, I would take it, but 3.5, I'm out.
Yep, I can't agree more. And, the Rams are coming off a really good game, 37-14, granted against Arizona, but they gained, I guess it was close to 500 yards, like 480. And that's a regression point. That's not sustainable even for 2 weeks in a row with a team like the Rams, even with a great coach that they have and the quarterback they have. It's just not going to happen twice in a row very, very often. I'm not saying it can't, but in this matchup against a very, very good defense, I don't think Cleveland's going to give up 400 yards. Maybe they won't even give up 300. So it's going to be a tough game for the Rams, I think, to be successul.
Yeah, it's funny. I look at this game kind of similar to the Rams versus the Seahawks a couple weeks ago. I think it's going to be that kind of battle where the Rams probably get it done. Both these teams are obviously heavily flawed. So, it's going to come down to, a turnover late or something like that. So, I mean, it's definitely one that Browns could pull off. I just don't like them there because similar to the Steelers for me, their inability to score points is my biggest issue with the team, because obviously the defense is fantastic. But if you can't put points on the board, I don't care how good your defense is.
Yeah, exactly right.
And then, of course, we move into the San Francisco at Philly game. This is going to be the game of the week for sure. I'm really looking forward to this game. And the line is really tight. San Fran is favored by 2.5 and over under a 46.5. This one is it's a tough pick because when you look at the way the Niners are beating people, they're the better team. But the Eagles are playing championship ball in the way that they're finding ways to win, even when they're not playing their best ball. And, that is more often than not a championship caliber team is not necessarily winning by style points, but still getting the win. And then an over under a 46.5. I like the over here. Both these offenses can score. So despite the fact that they both have a good defense, there's going to be some points in this game. But at 2.5, I'm going to take San Fran to cover.
I think you're right there. The Eagles are playing tremendous football. Their comeback being down 10 going into the fourth quarter against Buffalo was just magical. You just kind of felt like it was going to happen. Yep. Almost like when you're watching Georgia get behind in a game in college football and what happens in the second half. They're just going to do it. And you don't know how much they're going to win by, but they're going to come from behind. Eagles are much the same way. San Fran's playing with revenge, though, from last year's playoff loss where Purdy was hurt and Dede Samuel was out. So I think San Fran's motivated. And keep in mind, Eagles have gone through a gauntlet here. It was Dallas, then the bye week, Kansas City, Buffalo, now this. Yep. Next week they play Seattle, and then they have Dallas again. It's one of the most brutal stretches any team has played. The great news for Eagle fans, though, is they're 3-0 in this 6-game stretch already. So the worst they can go is 3-3, and that still more than likely going to be enough to get the number one seed and the bye week for the playoffs, which is so monumentally important. I do have a betting algorithm here I'll share with you too for the 49ers. This one's pretty good. You're betting on favorites that have won 3 of their last 4 games. The dog has won 8 or more of their last 10 games, which is obviously the Eagles. So the favorite's gone 49-20 with 2 pushes at 71.2% since 2004. And then if we drill a little bit deeper, and that dog has won 9 or more of the last 10 games, that road favorite has gone 21-4 straight up, 84%, 19-4-2 against the number for 83%, again, over the last 20 seasons. So I think, it's not the end of the world if the Eagles lose this game, even if it's at home. It's not going to hurt their chances to win the Super Bowl, which I think they're going to do. But this game is a very tough matchup for them based on who they've played in recent weeks. The fatigue factor has got to be huge coming off that overtime win.
Absolutely. No, again, this is my game of the week for sure. This one's going to be so much fun to watch. I wish it was in prime time.
I do too. And why it isn't, I don't know.
Right? I mean, because the next game we're going to talk about is the Sunday night game, and KC at Green Bay. I mean, who cares, right? Like, Green Bay isn't great. And KC is a 6-point favorite, over under 42. I think KC covers. Obviously, they win outright. And over under 42, I'm taking the over here because, I mean, despite the fact that Green Bay has won a couple of games over the last couple of weeks, they're not a great team. And although KC has shown that it's vulnerable, their defense is playing exceptionally well, and their offense, albeit kind of old and not necessarily having the weapons that they used to have, are still going to be able to beat up on a very average Green Bay defense.
Yeah, I definitely see your points there, and I agree with them. The one thing that I thought was shocking over the last couple of weeks was the simple fact that Kansas City did not score a single point in the second half of 3 consecutive games. The last one was against the Eagles, where the Eagles held them scoreless and came from behind, and one of their 4 come from behind, trailing by double digits, coming from behind and winning for the 4th time, which is truly remarkable right there. But last week, obviously, Kansas City, as I said earlier, was not making me too happy being down 14-0. But then they just got their act together, and they looked like the Chiefs that we always thought they would be. I think it probably carries over to this game as well. Why wouldn't it? They're talented. Mahomes is still the best quarterback on the planet. Maybe Jalen Hurts has closed the gap significantly, but if you have a guy that's, the Joe Montana drive in the Super Bowl, where they were on the 3-yard line, and Jerry Rice tells the story so well, where they're all nervous, and Joe Montana kneels down to give him the play, and he says, "Guys, is that John Candy in the stands?" And it was. And right then and there, Jerry Rice said, "We knew we were going to go the length of the field, 98 yards, and win the Super Bowl," and they did. But that's the type of guy Mahomes is, I think, in that huddle. He just brings a sense of confidence that is second to none right now in the NFL. I mean, Jalen Hurts is doing a great job. A lot of other quarterbacks too, but Mahomes always. I would, if I was on defense as a cornerback, that would be my most frightening moment, to know a minute 50 to go in the game and we're winning by 2, and he's got the ball. That would be a very scary situation. But I think Kansas City is definitely the pick here. Betting against dogs at 3.5 to 9.5 points in a non-conference matchup, with that dog coming off a win to a divisional rival as an underdog, an upset win over a division rival as an underdog of 6 or more points. So betting against those dogs, 28-8, 78%, and that goes all the way back to 1983. And over the last 10 seasons, it's 8-1. So very rare, but very powerful. And that clearly works against Green Bay and supports Kansas City.
Yeah, it's I mean, anytime you have an emotional win, right, where you are a big underdog or there's a huge play that turns it in your favor, it's so hard to come back the next week and keep that kind of energy week to week. I mean, you've seen tons of times through the NFL, through history, right, where there's a huge emotional win and then they come out flat the following week. And this is kind of what I expect to see out of Green Bay is they're going to start sluggish. They'll probably kind of wake up and it'll be too little too late.
I can definitely see that happening for sure. You know, it's basically back-to-back weeks that Green Bay has had high-powered emotional wins. The second to last was at home against the Chargers, 23-20. They won as a three-point dog. Went under by a point. The total was 44. But back-to-back weeks of upset wins, that it's really even more difficult to keep the momentum going against a Super Bowl reigning champion like the Chiefs.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the only saving grace is it is at least at Lambeau. So that is
right.
a tough place to play. And it is the time of year where it's going to be cold.
Yeah, check the weather forecast always when it involves Green Bay at home for sure.
Yep. And then, of course, Monday Night Football. I don't know why this is Monday Night Football.
I don't either.
Bengals at the Jags. Jags are an 8.5-point favorite. Over under of 38. This is one where I don't love the Jags, right? Like I don't love similar to Miami. I don't love their defense, right? Like statistically, their defense is okay, but in key moments they come up short. And so that's it's something I don't love about the Jags. But then you look at the Bengals; they also don't play defense particularly well, and of course, there's no Joe Burrow. And so this one, even though it's an 8.5-point, Jags favorite, I'm going to take the points and I'm going to take the over because neither team likes to play defense very much.
I think you're absolutely right here. And this is, as of now, if I had to make my pick for the eliminator now, I would use Jacksonville. And you might say, well, why wouldn't you use Miami? Well, we talked about why I wouldn't. But if I can keep Miami and the Eagles in my pocket, it's going to get pretty exciting if I can get through this week. And then my goal is to get to the Eagles when they play the Giants. And that would be week 16. And a lot of times these, eliminators are ended on week 15, 16, 17. Very rarely does it go the full season. But if I'll feel pretty good, to be honest with you, if I can use the Eagles in week 16 and I'm still alive. But I think the Jaguars here are the team that the Bengals are 5-6, and look at the schedule they have to face down the stretch too. The odds of them making the playoffs at this point is pretty remote, and Jacksonville is sneaking up on Kansas City. Who's to say they can't win all but one of their last remaining games here, and get the home field advantage of the number one seed? They're clearly flying under the radar. They started the season with a tremendous amount of hype. It was everybody's darling to upset the Chiefs and go to the Super Bowl. And of course, when it's a team's associated with hype, what happens? They start out very sluggish. They look like not even a playoff team. But since they have been slowly getting better and better on both sides of the ball, and I think they have everything to play for, whereas Cincinnati doesn't. So I like your pick on Jacksonville quite a bit.
Yeah, the Jags feel like that. They feel like that movie that's been overhyped. You watch it in the theater and you're disappointed, but then you watch it later and you're like, it's not as bad as I thought it was, right? Because now the hype is a little bit removed. And you're like, okay, you know what? It was a decent movie. Like you go and you watched it in the theater with all the hype, and you're like, yeah, I could have watched this on Netflix instead. But then later when you see it, you're like, oh, okay, no, you know what? This is actually a pretty good movie. That is essentially the Jags to me. I had them winning their division, obviously, but I never had them in the Super Bowl conversation. They seemed like a divisional round kind of exit for me. My preseason pick for the Super Bowl was Eagles-Ravens. I like. Yeah, so far it's holding up, right?
That's looking really good.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I liked the Ravens last year until Lamar got injured, because there's a lot of elements to that team that I really liked. And then they bring in some extra pieces for him. He's healthy. Like, I liked that team. And I really liked the Eagles because the pieces that they lost, they essentially filled in with Georgia's national championship team, right? Like, they brought in half of their defense. So you knew that the pieces they lost were going to fill in nicely. So I liked the Eagles there. What surprised me this year is how much that offense doesn't look confident for the Eagles, right? Like, they have most of their pieces back, but they seem a little bit off. They've backed into wins, so kudos for winning, but they just don't look right. They don't look like they've played their best football.
I agree. You have the AJ Brown sagas going on too on the sidelines, and I think probably the media is blowing that out of proportion a little bit. I think AJ Brown is like a Terrell Owens. Yep. In the locker room, he's the number one leader of the team, first one to the stadium, last one to leave, and it does remind me of T.O. in a way. T.O. obviously different personality, a little bit probably more charismatic, I guess, if you will. But I don't think there's any breakdown at all, because AJ Brown was voicing his opinion about maybe it was just a certain play, maybe it wasn't about getting targets, and that's where people lose kind of their minds about it. And they didn't make a big deal out of nothing, where it's just competitive nature of AJ Brown wanting to win, much like that's all Terrell wanted to do. He played the Super Bowl with a broken leg, for goodness sake.
Exactly.
And, I think AJ Brown would do the same thing if, God forbid, that would happen to him.
Yeah, well, and that's where AJ Brown is so different from like a Stephon Diggs, right? AJ Brown, you think you view it exactly like that. You think he's just being competitive and wants to win. And when you look at Diggs, you're like, man, we've seen this movie before. You did the same thing, over there with the Vikings, and you're okay for a couple of years, and then you become this disgruntled employee essentially and force your way out. And it sure seems like that's where it's headed in Buffalo.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. It's a great analogy too. Sulking is the word, I think. And you don't see that with AJ Brown or Devontae Smith or any of the Eagles for that matter. They're all on the same page. But as you said, Minnesota and now Buffalo, we've seen that movie before. And that movie you were talking about that you saw in the theater and it wasn't any good, and then later on you thought it was great? Yes. Shawshank Redemption came to my mind. I just wanted to point that out, because I think that is probably the classic movie where it was hyped and it was going to be the greatest thing ever, and it got terrible reviews, but then years later it became like the guy's guy movie. It was amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fantastic film, but yeah, I mean, it did have some crazy hype to it. But then after you go back and watch it, you're like, no, that's actually a pretty great film, though. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we got some teams on bye week. Now some of these teams, their seasons are over already. You got the Bears on bye, you got the Giants on bye, Raiders on bye. The Vikings are interesting. If they come out healthy, they're supposed to come back with Justin Jefferson out of the bye week, so that should be an interesting push to see if they can get into that final wild card spot. Obviously, for the Ravens, this is an opportunity for them to get healthy, and the Bills. Who knows what the Bills are doing? They are playing the most inconsistent brand of football. 1 week they'll come out and look like they're supposed to be winning their division. And then other times they come out and you'd think they were the Raiders. They just wildly inconsistent team.
No doubt about it. And they are going to face Kansas City coming off the bye on the road. I have that line right now, Kansas City -3. That doesn't seem like it's near enough, but it's the fact that Buffalo is coming off the bye. Yep. And now it's even more of a desperate team. I think the line reflects also that Buffalo, you could say, won the game in Philadelphia, but they didn't. They outstatted them. They dominated them for 3 quarters, but they still didn't win the game.
Yep. Yeah, there's only one stat
So-
that matters at the end.
Right. That's all that matters. Like you said, style points don't count.
Yep.
It's not figure skating, right?
That's right. It's not the NCAA.
Yeah, exactly.
You may not be as good, but you're going to get in because you beat some guys by 50 because you played Temple.
Yeah. No offense to Temple.
I mean, you know.
You're right.
All right, my man. Well, we're here at the end. Be sure to tell everybody where they can find you.
You can find me mainly on the X, formerly known as Twitter, at John Ryan Sports and the number 1. I also have a website called predictiveplaybook.com. I've worked for a lot of companies over the years, Wager Talk, Sports Memo, Vegas Experts, and the list is pretty long, but I'm at the point in my career now where I want to teach and educate and help people have fun betting. It's not something you consider doing full time as a pro. But if you want to add a little bit more excitement with the use of pizza money and taking advantage of those parlay offers that DraftKings and BetMGM give us, that's what it's all about. So come over and check it out and let me know what you think.
Awesome. And then, of course, if you are watching right now on YouTube or Facebook, be sure to like and subscribe. Helps us continue making content for you. If you want to bet with us, the link is down in the bio there. BetUS, you can bet along with us. And, of course, if you are playing Pick'em with us, be sure to get those locked in before kickoff tonight so that you don't get locked out of your picks. If you're watching on Roku, be sure to check out our website, Football Talk Bo, and you can grab the link on either one of those to come and play with us as well. And other than that, thanks for coming and hanging out with me today. And
my pleasure. Absolute pleasure. I hope you'll be on again.
Absolutely. And other than that, hope everybody enjoys football tonight. Got the Seahawks headed down to Dallas. I'm a Hawks fan. I hope they can pull it off. Unfortunately, that's not where my pick is because, well, I'm an analyst first, and it doesn't make sense. So have a great day, everybody.